Welcome to Windows on the World, bringing you cutting-edge news, empowering information and no conspiracy theories. On tonight's show. Okay, so we're talking to James on Windows on the World. We've actually done a couple of shows with you in the past, and the shows in the past refer to what we're going to be talking about next, because not only have you had problems with TV licensing, but you've also had trouble with council tax, which I think most people will relate to, and we've covered a lot on the show. But yours actually goes into a real pantomime, because the police got involved, and it all got quite scary for a while, in a way, didn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was definitely a move to scare me off, and we've got some. We've dug up some details on the matter now, so we have a much broader understanding of what's going on and how it's happened and why it's happened. We suspect we know who's behind it, and we'll get into that again. And basically, what's happened here is March of 2014. There was a council tax summons. So we already know that the council produced their own summons. So there's been a hearing held at Bradford Magistrates Courts. I now know that the person who authorised this complaint was in fact Gordon Airy, Deputy Justice's clerk, and he himself actually stated that there was a 1 in 3 chance it would have been him. Alternatively, it would have been one of his legal team managers. Interestingly enough, the last correspondence I had with Bradford Magistrates Courts, when I first started communicating with them, I spoke to Richard Irwin, legal team manager, and I actually mentioned him in that show, and I named him on his contradiction, stating that yes, they're obliged and responsible for information generated as a result of civil and criminal proceedings, but then went on to say that he didn't have any of the information relating to the complaint or the summons that was issued, and nor could he produce a copy of the liability order. And I've now found out from Gordon Airy, after going public with his stuff, I don't know if it's related, but he's now retired from Bradford Magistrates Court, so he's gone now. But basically what's happened is we've got this non-payment of council tax, we've received a summons, we've gone to the hearing, we've spoken to, and this is interesting, I requested to speak to a clerk, and what did I get? Someone who I thought was a clerk, and I says, are you a court clerk? And she says, no, I'm a council clerk. So what's happening here is, and as you already know, the rooms held within the courts where the bulk hearing sessions are taking place, and there's usually 2 rooms. These are private hired rooms, and basically council tax run the whole show. And if you go to the courts and you give them the summons number on the summons itself that looks like it's come from Bradford Magistrates Courts, but it hasn't, it's come from council. If you ask them for information relating to the summons and give them the summons number, they'll say that's nothing to do with us, go and speak to the council. So there you have it, right there.
Well, exactly, James, and we just did a show with the Reverend Paul Nicholson, who has now got a judicial review into council tax court costs, and under the local authority's statutory duty, revenues officers, the government guidelines for local authorities, they have to be able to give you a breakdown of the costs of that summons. So what councils are doing is they're printing a bit of paper which they call a summons and charging you £120 for it. Now, I've had them over several times with this, and I've just put an affidavit in about it. But this is very, very important. And the same with the liability orders. You will never get a liability order for council tax. You'll get a notice of liability. You'll get a liability order if they take it back to a proper court.
Yeah.
But usually in their administrative kangaroo pantomime courts,
it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. So you can have a bit of fun with this. And they've recently threatened to put me in prison, which I've had a lot of fun with putting my affidavit in there. That's a totally different story we'll get onto in another show. But to get back to your case, what happened was you decided to record the proceedings so that you knew what went on.
Well, this is actually relating to another case. It was my case with Bradford Council that started me off with Bradford Council matters. And having learned what I'd learned from the TV licence matters, I decided to document the whole thing in exactly the same way. And again, for the viewing public, all of the documentations, the public case files can be made available online. All the links to the videos, and there's a full table of contents in there, so you can navigate your way through the reports. But basically, there was another TV licence, council tax matter, where I also become involved in the reporting of that. And a recording was made of the private council tax hearing taking place in relation to another case, which proved that the chairman, let's call them chairman, alleged chairman, didn't have any of the information in front of him. And what we found is that he's basically being told what to do by the council clerk. Now, this is very important, because what's happened here is that when you go to these hearings and request the information, the courts do not have it. The council have all the information, but the council are the complainants. So this information should have gone to the courts, been authorised correctly. And what we found from Gordon Airy, Deputy Justice's clerk, is that there is actually no consideration whatsoever. Now, in Gordon Airy's own words, what he's revealed is that, and I'm going to bring it up here and actually read out exactly what he said, because it's been transcribed from a recorded call. Okay, spoke to Gordon Airy on the 20th of July 2015, and these are the problems that I'm having with him.
I would recommend that everybody do this. This is your court of record. You get everything from these people in writing. They can say anything over the phone. I record the phone calls. It doesn't matter. Everything has to be on paper. So once they put pen to paper, you've got them.
That's right. Once you put pen to paper, that's exactly right. I'm just trying to still bring this up, Mark. Just bear with me. So basically what's happened is I've been on the phone with Gordon Airy related to this matter. And I've basically told him that I'm not liable for the amount. And the reason I'm not liable is because I wasn't living or resident to the premises at the period in which they're charging for. So I've left the premises in February of 2013, and council tax are billing me for April to July of 2013. So I wasn't living there, and that's now gone on an affidavit. But I've, in discussion with Gordon Airy to try and get remedy to the matter, I've gone into what I believe to be fraud and corruption taking place, and that there's no due consideration. I've told him that the CPR rules have gone right out the window, and he's basically told me over the phone, trying to do some sort of damage control, and stated that the person, they've got a criteria to meet, a 3 criteria, and this is him saying that due consideration has been made into the complaint. So there's a criteria. He's basically said the law surrounding the consideration in granting a liability order is very, very, very prescriptive, as the court has virtually no wiggle room whatsoever. And I've said to him, Well, that's just an absurd statement to make. The court has no manoeuvring room whatsoever in regards to complaints being made to the courts. You realise that that's what you've said? And he responded with, yes, sir. I said, well, that's just shocking. So what he's basically said is that council tax make this complaint to the courts, and the courts have no choice but to grant it for the release of a summons for the liability order.
James, I just want to bring in something very important here. This also relates to the Farley ruling, which the Child Support Agency use against members of the public. The ruling states that the magistrates cannot question the liability order. So they're not using the basics of court procedure, which is basically if a complaint's made, then that complaint has to be upheld properly. And of course, they're just stating you owe this money and you're salvage, you're in our court, so we're going to rinse you. There are ways around the Farley ruling, and that is the court of record. And
yes, that's right. And to bring in, actually, I can actually add to that.
Yes.
There are objectives of pre-action conduct and protocols relating complaints being made to the courts, and in their own civil procedure rules, before commencing proceedings, the court will expect the parties to have exchanged sufficient information to A, understand each other's position, B, make decisions about how to proceed, C, try to settle the issues without proceedings, D, consider a form of alternative dispute resolution, ADR, to assist with settlement, E, support the efficient management of those proceedings, and F, reduce the costs of resolving the dispute. So straight away, they've got strict rules to follow. Now, these rules were brought into effect. They were introduced in 1995. I looked this up. And in 2000, they were brought through legislation which makes these rules law. These civil procedure rules and criminal procedure rules are rules that the courts themselves have to follow. And these rules account for applications being made to the courts.
Exactly. In a system that is totally corrupted, there is still the golden rule of law, that everybody is equal under the law and nobody is above the law. And that's really what we're talking about here, isn't it?
Yes, we're talking about Bradford Council in this case, in all cases, basically acting above the law. They are the complainant, they are the power in authority within that hearing room, and they create a liability order that doesn't exist and use that authority that doesn't exist to make deductions from your income, or potentially even, in some cases, if you're really incompetent with your person, even put you in jail. I mean, these are just real criminal matters, bailiffs as well, with no real court authority. And again, there has to be an application to the courts, and that information has to be considered. And in my case, I discovered from Gordon Airy's own mouth, there is a 3 criteria, and it's the only thing required for Bradford Council to make a claim for a liability order, and this is it here. 1, the person is the occupier. 2, an address. 4, 3, an unpaid amount. And he stated we don't actually ask where they get this information from.
No, all they need,
just incredible.
I know. All they need is an address, the name. Yeah, because they need the place of service and the name, and then and that name is then liable. That's how they do it. They just tie the name to the address.
He says on those 3 things, and this is his words transcripted, on those 3 things, the courts have no alternative but to grant a liability order. The law, and this was key, this is where I got him, you see, the law does allow to adjourn for inquiries, but other than that, the court has no power to say we don't think you got it right, therefore we are not going to grant it. So I've asked him why it wasn't adjourned in my case, as I clearly went down on the day in March of 2014 and requested information from the courts that did not exist, and the information that council tax had I couldn't get because the computer systems were down that day. So hello, convenient for them there, but that doesn't matter because in the correspondence through email to both parties, that being Bradford Magistrates Courts and Bradford Council, council tax, Bradford Council, didn't respond for about 4 or 5 months into the correspondence. So I started sending emails to them in May, and they didn't get back until August. So there you go, people. That's it right there. And in that, when they did finally respond, they disregarded all of the previous correspondence, still claimed to owe the money, apologise for replying for so late. So we'll maybe waive one of the costs here for you. So dangling a carrot in front of my face. I clearly haven't accepted it. I've basically told them to refer back to previous correspondence if they want to understand my current position on the matter. And where it's got interesting is that I realised at some point along the lines they've started deducting money from my income. And this is where it got interesting, because this is why I've gone back to the courts eventually. Eventually, I've just deemed the courts and Bradford Council in error. They failed to produce a copy of the liability order. So they're in error, and I'm not liable for the amount because I wasn't living at the premises. These are just simple things that you should be able to... A member of the public would assume that if you're not living at a premises and you've been charged for it, you go to Bradford Council, and the wonderful customer service there will say, yes, of course, you wasn't living there. That's obviously in error. I'll look into the matter and get back to you. At least that, at the very least. But no. So once they create this liability order that doesn't exist, whether you dispute it or not, they've not given you any consideration. And it's scary because, in theory, I could claim that Mark Windows at your address owes me £100. And without the courts confirming that information, or being unable to confirm that information, the courts would have no choice but to authorise a summons.
Yes, this is how it works, James. This is quite an important thing you brought up here. Yeah. Especially with council tax, because what happens if you move out of an address, which I recently did, is that you phone them up and say, I'm no longer resident. They will still say that you are liable unless you can give them a name of another person or legal fiction that's moving into that address. Now, you may not know who's moving into that address, exactly. So they still hold you liable. So this is a massive error, an assumption they're making.
Yeah, and not only that, I know for a fact that somebody did move into the premises shortly after, and I know that he will also be charged for council tax to the premises within the time that I'd moved out. So not only are they charging liability for me for the premises for that time, they're charging the person who probably actually lives there for that period as well. So they're getting double bubble.
That's right, absolutely. But I got one of the agents of the council stating that to me, saying, if you can't give us the name, the full name of a person that's moving in, you are still liable. I said, thanks for your legal advice, and put the phone down.
yeah, that's very interesting, because they're not legally qualified. In fact, people might be interested to know that a lot of the lay magistrates that are up there in these private hearings are actually, in most cases, not legally qualified. So basically, the courts have admitted that there is no information, and that not only that there is no due consideration. So they've not verified the information, yet they are stating that they have. So this is very critical in terms of law, and this has also gone in the affidavit. But what we can do here is sort of segue into how that all of this that's been uncovered and reported upon, recorded calls, a public profile being made on the case. What's happened is that council tax have become found it a nuisance and something to deal with. We had an incident that we talked about on my last time I was on the show with you, where they'd actually sent CID out to the premises of one of the care of addresses that I was staying at you'd be using as a care of address. And what they've basically done is they've tried to hunt me down, and they've harassed several people trying to look for me. They've made some incredible, shocking attempts to try and twist the whole scenario by actually bringing full documentary video recording equipment to a specific premises in the hopes of trying to get me on camera, and just surprising me at the door, and obviously making some sort of a twisted version of what they're investigating and accusing me of breaking the law, which just isn't the case entirely.
I'll just back this up a bit, James, because on that show we did cover this, and you had an unknown person with a video camera coming to your doorstep, banging on your door with
constables,
constables, and the CID involved. Now, I've never heard of this before, but I presume it's because of your previous reporting on the TV licensing and council tax. And what happens, or appears to have happened, is a change agent's become involved in the local authority, and they have brought down this draconian kind of invasion of your privacy under their own liability, even though you've proved that they are not in possession of the facts or evidence, and they're actually overreaching their authority by harassing members of the public and, in your case, threatening you with kidnap.
Yeah, I was threatened. That's right. I mean, after several weeks of harassment, I found that they resorted to actually phoning round members of my family. They also tried to coerce the mother of my children into meeting up with me on the streets with my children to try and arrest me on video recording. So they wanted to publicly humiliate me and make some sort of a documentary against me. It was a full-blown move to try and silence me, and somebody must have been with me above, because we managed to trump them on every turn, quite literally, to the point where the only real thing that I regret is that I had to go back down to the police station 3 days a week.
Yeah, they put you on bail. They put you on police bail. But what was even worse than that was you weren't really on bail, were you? They just told you were on bail.
Yeah, basically. They had no authority to authorise it, and a complaint will be made to the sergeant involved in that. And after all these weeks of harassment, what finally led to my being arrested was that when I found out that this man from the CID department had been phoning around all my family, I managed to get a hold of his number from one of the people he'd spoken to. In this case, it was the landlord to one of the premises I was visiting. The lady there, I'm a carer for her, so I was in my caring capacity, and he spoke to me, and he knew about the problem, he knew about the police visits. He himself had been intimidated to letting the police into the flat. And what I did was I made an outgoing call to 01274 474 794, which is the CID department. This was at 16:45 on Thursday, the 18th of September 2014, after several weeks of harassment at this point. And the call lasted for 5 minutes and 48 seconds. And in that call, the CID department there, the officer that I spoke to, confirmed there was nothing on the system for my full name, and no arrest warrants showing whatsoever. What happened was, the next day, when I discovered that CID had been phoning around my family looking for me, it was one particular person, and this was a Detective Constable Dean Smith, DC Dean Smith, and I phoned him on 16:25, Friday the 19th of September 2014, the day after I'd spoken to the CID department. The call lasted for 2 minutes and 10 seconds because he hung up on me, and he hung up on me after saying, "James, I'm going to find you and I'm going to lock you up," and he put the phone down on me. And when I was questioning on what the hell are you playing at, what the hell are you doing harassing friends and family, what are you playing at, what's going on? And he just basically went, "James, I'm going to find you and I'm going to lock you up," and he hung up on me. So this is where I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt this was unlawful operation, in some sort of a move to try and silence me. And I believe now that the evidence that I've produced, including the recording that was presented on YouTube as well, of the private hearing, with all the testimony, all the letters, clearly proving what's going on here. They don't like it. They can't afford to have that information being released to the public, even though it's out there. We've been working on this for several years now. He called me back, did this Dean C. Smith, after that, thinking maybe, that was a little abrupt, I don't know. But a further 21 minutes of 41 seconds worth of call of just saying absurd statements along the lines of, I mean, one of the questions asked to him, do you have a warrant? And he went, what do you think this is, America? I mean, absurd statements, absolute absurd statements, just totally ridiculing, laughing, demeaning, bringing down, belittling, making out that I'm, very humorous to him, and it's he's actually enjoyed the call because of I've been the highlight of his day because I'm such a nutter, I'm such a conspiracy theorist. So it's all that sort of psychological warfare there as well.
It's brilliant, James, because this guy's meant to be trained in criminal investigations, and this is really what Cameron's big society is all about. It's about petty-minded officials acting way beyond their authority and outside the law. But in a way, this is where we win, isn't it?
Yeah, because their actual conduct itself is the evidence of their corruption, and it's the information we're going to use to win. All we need to do is record it. All we need to do is report it. All we need to do is get it on paper and make those complaints. And again, for the viewing public, if you make a formal complaint, insert header at the top and in bold, put formal complaint. And by law, that's got to stay on the system. Always keep a copy of what you send out for yourself, and when it comes down to it, when it goes to the courts and you write your affidavits and enclose all of your previous correspondence with them, the conceptual weight of the file itself will mean that the issues have to be addressed. But it doesn't matter how long or large or devastating your story is, ultimately they don't want to listen to it. So what you need to do is get back to source and state the facts from the very beginning, that there was no authority in the first place to proceed in the way they did, and that the way that they did proceed was unlawful. And what they were doing was harassing and committing crimes to violate privacy, dignity, just a list of offences that they are committing, and they're going to be held liable for it because that is their position.
Well, your case was actually, I'd never heard of anything like that happening before. That happened to you. I knew this kind of thing was going on, as I'd been targeted by my local authority because I took them to court. But I'd never had anyone turning up on my doorstep with a camera and the police threatening to kidnap
me. The worst
me.
part about it is it wasn't even my doorstep, and the lady that lived at the premises was frightened, and so was the landlord. He was intimidated as well. So there's a whole range of offences taking place here, and it is a sign of just how close to the truth that we've got. They don't like it. It's why TV licensing, it's why the police wouldn't take the complaint of perjury for my first case. And I don't think they like the fact that it's all being reported and thrown back in the face. So they're reacting really badly, in regards to all this. But in regards to the police matter, I mean, I was arrested on the 21st of the 9th, 2014, and there was a log report for the incident of DC Dean Smith, which has not been responded to. So having currently worked on all these cases and caught up a little bit, I'll now be pursuing this matter. There's at least 3 individuals there that the complaints need to go against. 5, in fact, if you include the constables that arrested me. Because I basically went in to make a complaint about the police, and they arrested me in an attempt to trump up false charges and issue a caution on me, which I wouldn't accept.
Exactly, because that meant you would have accepted that the offence had been committed, so never accept a caution. But in summing up for today's show, I think that the message that we're giving out is get your court of record together and your affidavit. So just sum up where you are now with these 2 issues, the TV licensing and the council tax.
Affidavits. It's got to the point now where what action should have been taken right at the very beginning is the action that I'm now at a stage where all of the evidence and correspondence has just naturally led to in anyway. So it was inevitable that the rule of law would prevail, and it's just taking us all a while to figure this out. But not only that, but to get the people in public office to see this as well, and that they are under the same rule of law and that they need to adhere to that. We see it's infected everything. We see it's infected not just the courts and the police and the council, but the Department of Work and Pensions and Job Centre Plus. A huge amount of corruption taking place there. The kind of corruption that the results to people committing suicide and being denied money that they're entitled to within the law. Just a real sort of breaking down of the humanity within the staff and within the claimants, and forcing everybody into this real sort of draconian state that we've come into, that's been backed up even more so by the Tory side of things, and Cameron and the things that he's pushing for. And again, I mean, you do quite a well-rounded collection of news reports and bring a lot of sort of information from a lot of really relevant different sources, but ultimately the whole thing sort of summarized sort of leads into the bigger picture of what their agenda is, because there is an agenda, and there are many agendas involved, but it's all under Agenda 21 as we know it. That's you know, if you want to put a label on it, but it is about breaking down society, targeting the poor and the vulnerable, targeting people's ignorance and lack of knowledge of the law, that they themselves are just acting way above. So it's progressed now to a culture. And like I said before, the good people inside need members of the public to come forth, and the members of the public need the good people inside to respond to those complaints, because that's the only way we're going to really fix the problem. The system as we know it is on the verge of collapse. It's been propped up, and it is about to pop. But it's got to the stage now where they need more money all the time, and the bubble's got that big that the only resource now is us, and and that's reflected in the Department of Work and Pensions and all of the conditions of the roads and the quality of the healthcare, the indoctrinations within the education systems. All ties in to a lack of due process, shocking training, brainwashing of the staff to the point where the staff don't really know the law.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's called Cameron's Big Society. Not that he's in charge of it. It's just coming under his watch. And yeah, we've covered this quite a lot. These change agents have taken over. They're in every form of public office. These are the people we need to challenge. We've talked about this quite a lot. We're going to get some updates from you soon on Job Centre Plus, some very interesting things you've found out there. But for today, James, thanks very much. And everybody out there, remember your court of record and your affidavit when these people come along and make assumptions is the most powerful thing in law.
Thanks a lot, Mark. It's been great being on the show, and I look forward to the updates on some upcoming stuff that we have relating to the DWP and the Job Centre Plus. So that I'll be looking forward to bringing all that information forth. That's fantastic.
Thanks, James. And we'll put the links into the article which will contain the video on windowsontheworld.net.
Yes, alternatively, if you don't mind, Mark, if I put a little shout there for the actual source of the YouTube channel. So if anybody is interested in seeing some of the videos, with that also have the links that Mark will provide, but the links should be there as well. That's the James Reporting channel, and you can identify it quite easily because there's a picture of a red chili on there, on the profile picture. And obviously, having sort of heard everything that we've spoken about, you're able to put the videos in context because what we're trying to do is break the programming that has been sort of enforced on the people, and break that trance-like state so they can actually identify what is right, what is wrong, what is law, what isn't, so that they don't have to live in fear anymore, and that they can get remedy to all these matters. So thanks again, Mark.
Thanks, James. We'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye, mate.
Thanks for watching Windows on the World. Remember, keep watching those, watching us, watching Windows on the World, and we'll see you soon.